Yeah, yeah. No, I'll jump in from time to time for sure.
Yeah, just ask me a question or time whenever I get kind of stuck on things or something.
Will do. So okay, so it says on air. So hello everyone. I believe we're live, so that's a good thing. So good afternoon, and thank you all for joining. We do understand your time is valuable, and we respect that. My name is Chad Williams. I am the chairman and the founder of Red Cloud Securities, and it's certainly an honor and a pleasure to introduce Henk van Alphen. Henk is the CEO of Wealth Copper, and Henk will be telling us about Wealth Copper in a moment here. We will take questions throughout the presentation. If you go on the chat button, there is a chat button, and I'll see the questions as they come along, and I'll ask them to Henk and so forth. So please feel free to ask questions as the presentation goes on. First of all, though, I have to go through some legalities. There will or may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. There is a cautionary note on Wealth Copper's presentation that I'd refer you to. In terms of Red Cloud Securities Incorporated, I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only, should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation in any way to buy or sell securities. We do also note that this call does not take into account a particular situation or needs of any individual investor. Participants should rely on their own investigations, seek their own professional advice before investment as well. Please refer to our recent research located on the Red Cloud Securities website for any Wealth Copper disclosures. So with that out of the way, I will turn it over to Henk. I'm going to turn my video off, but I'll still be present in the background. So Henk, over to you to talk about Wealth Copper, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chad, for this introduction. My name is Henk van Alphen, I'm the CEO of Wealth Copper. I will be kind of maybe flipping through the slide presentation a little bit, so hopefully nobody gets seasick on this presentation. But let me sort of maybe start. Here's the cautionary statement, and I'm sure everybody would love to read all this, so we'll just go to the next place. We are a copper company focused in Chile that maybe in the future could change by adding some projects somewhere else, but for the time being, this is a Chilean focused company. Sorry, I did something to my screen already. Sorry. Okay. I will actually sort of say the experienced Chilean team. So I'll just start out to say as this how this all started. I went to Chile about 4 years ago, having worked in South America for maybe like 30 years, off and on, Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador. I connected to a person called Marcelo Awad, and I'd known him for quite a few years. And 4 years ago, I had the opportunity to get into the lithium business in Chile, and I asked Marcelo to be my, let's say, partner there, and he graciously accepted this. So I should know, lithium was, of course, we were the heroes in 2016 and 2017, and not quite so heroic in 2018 and 2019, and hopefully we'll be heroic again in 2020 and 2021. But Marcelo was the ex-CEO of Antofagasta, and Antofagasta is a large, probably maybe the second largest copper producer in Chile, and he was the CEO, basically turned it into a $50 billion company, and it trades on the FTSE 100 in London. So every time Marcelo and I went to visit London, there was always this hint of, why didn't you guys start a copper company? So this is how the idea really started and where this all came from. So Marcelo, of course, is one of the most well-known CEO in the copper business. So I asked him, and you could see Marcelo here. I will go and flick to Let me flick to a page that even has my, well, here. What I should do maybe before we get this page, I'm sure we're not going to be promoting copper here on this webinar. I think most people that are listening are probably somewhat convinced that copper is a up and coming metal. It's obviously thanks to COVID-19 that it's somewhat in the toilet here, but it's trying hard. And I see today it's up 2 cents again to 268 the last time I looked. So it's really trying hard to come back. I think when COVID-19 settles down, then there's going to be an enormous demand coming into the copper space. And COVID-19 has something to do with that. I mean, everybody has suddenly learned that electric cars are the wave of the future, more so. That was already fairly well known, and obviously being in the lithium space was one of the reasons why we're there in the first place. But now with COVID-19, it's becoming more and more obvious that we need to clean our environment, and electric cars are going to be a huge part of that environment. So as you can see from this slide, electric cars mean a lot more copper consumption. I think the next slide also had copper kills bacteria. I don't know where this will go in the end. If you listen to Robert Friedland, this is obviously going to be a huge demand for copper, and let's hope he's right. But it makes imminent sense that we are going to have doorknobs that are going to be made out of copper as opposed to stainless steel or whatever they are now. Chile, yes, obviously, if you want to be in the copper business, Chile is obviously the premier copper country in the world, as you can see from this slide. So Chile is of all the places in South America, Chile is a very organized country. Regulations mean regulations. So there is no really funny surprises. You just follow regulations, moving things forward, and you can get to an end of those regulations. So this is the slide I was actually moving towards. You can see Marcelo Watt is the top number on the left. As I said, he was the ex-CEO of Antofagasta, turned that into a major corporation. Patrick Burns on the right, he's a friend of mine that I worked with 30 years ago in Canada, but he's over 40 years in South America, has lots and lots of experience in Chile, was involved with the discovery of Escondida, one of the smaller copper mines, as you well know. So I was very happy to finally, after all this, to work with Patrick Burns. And he understands how things operate in South America while he is a Canadian. So it's very, very useful to have a person that you have on the team that can operate in both countries. John Drope is the geologist we use. He was involved with Corriente. I was involved with Corriente, and he was definitely the guy that was very much involved with creating this whole Corriente copper belt in Ecuador, which was then sold to a Chinese group for about $860 million. John, I think, is one of the smartest porphyry geologists that walks on this face of the earth, and we're very, very happy that he's on the team here. The top left, Mr. Roberto Faraone was so nice as to join this company. He was just retiring from VP of exploration for Codelco, and this is for worldwide exploration of Codelco. So this gentleman knows more about copper in Chile or anywhere else than most people do. Codelco, obviously, being the largest copper producer in the world, I was very honored, and not that I can take credit that he joined Wealth because of me, but he certainly did because of Marcelo Watt. So I don't care how he got to us. We're very happy to have him. Yeah. The projects we have two projects in Chile, one in the north, which this project actually comes through. Let me actually hold on, Cristal. This project comes through Pat Burns, who's actually owned this for quite a while. It's a project that is, I'll show you on this map here, but this is like in the porphyry belt in Chile, running into Peru here. This is where you'll find all the porphyries. So this area here is actually covered by volcanic rocks. So we're actually having to rely on geophysics, some work around it, and then drilling through about 300-400 meters of volcanics to get to the target here. But it's one of the ways you're going to find new porphyry systems in Chile, because the obvious ones laying on the surface, the low-hanging fruit has been picked over quite a bit, and this is the future of porphyry discoveries in Chile. It was somewhat, to me, it's sort of a similar story as, let's say, Spence, which was a fantastic discovery. And that was just basically, drilling holes along a trend. I don't know if they had the help of geophysics there, but we certainly do have the help of geophysics. There's been some work done around the area. So we are very sure that our target area is really the target area, but this will be sort of an area, in this belt, every so many kilometers, you will come up with a porphyry system, and this will be one of those. So I'm actually kind of excited about this. It's, if we discover something here, we'll be immediately dancing in the streets, let's say. All the major mining companies are around us. So we are actually the only really claim block in that area that's held by a small company. So I'm not a geologist, so I'm not really pretending that I'm going to go into any more detail on the geology of this project, but I am kind of happy with the target as it is, and it's drilling, of course, is always risky. So could you actually do this once more? Sorry. But I think it's a very justified target. If Pat Burns was here, he would be able to give you a lot more reasons geologically as to why this is so. But let me not bore you with any more than this. You could see here it's along the fault structures where you want to be. So we're in the right place, and we're at the right time. So here is some geophysics. I'm not a geophysicist, so I don't want to take any credit for understanding this, but we are in the bull's eye, let's say, of a target here. Then our main project is Escalones. It's a porphyry system that is 35 kilometers east of El Teniente. And the funny thing is 35 kilometers apparently means a lot. David Lowell came up with this idea that these porphyry systems were always about 35 to 40 kilometers away from each other. And thanks to the thickness of the crust. So we're actually, funny enough, 35 kilometers away from El Teniente, which is the largest underground copper mine in the world. We have like a cluster of porphyry sitting there. The work has been done on one area, but there is a lot of potential to do more work there. And there's 3 other porphyry systems on the project. There is a resource there. There is about 750 million tons of about 0.4 copper equivalent. What we want to do here is enlarge the tonnage, but also try to look for higher grade. And if you look at that, there is actually this deposit is oxidized for about the first 300 meters. So you get your higher grade sitting closer to surface. And then on the next slide, you'll see why we're kind of excited about the potential of this project. The drilling was done on that little orange round thing, 25,000 meters drilled in 53 holes. It's actually it's a flat area that sits there. It's probably done in the years of, okay, everybody's looking for porphyry copper deposits, and you find one and you keep on drilling and not entirely really worrying about what grade you have or how this is going into production, and you just sort of keep on pounding holes in an area. And this is how the 750 million tons were established in that little round area. We is a big word. John Drobe, Pat Burns sort of started to dissect all the information, looking at the drill holes, seeing what the opportunities are. And there's, lo and behold, a area to the south that was actually never touched called Macha Maria. It's a lithocap. One hole clipped it by accident on the northern part of this, and it actually came up with about 0.64 copper. So there was nobody ever followed this up, but it looks like this area will actually potentially double the resource that we have today. And if we maybe increase the cutoff grades a little bit, we could actually come up with a fairly sizable tonnage with a higher grade situation. Here you can see a picture of what it looks like. And actually this is the area where most of the drilling happened, and you can see the alteration there to the left. That is the Macha Maria extension, and no drill hole was ever put in there except on the edge of it. And this is obviously a target that one would really have to follow up on right away. You could see actually there's the cross section of that one hole, 40 meters or 0.6, and it's an enriched oxide material. Then on the other side, we have skarns. On the east side, there are skarns on the west side as well, which we actually have to do some more work on. But certainly the skarns on the east side, there's a hole there of 70 meters of 0.64, and it was never followed up. So this is obviously one of the targets that we need to follow up on right away. Then outside of the Escalones proper, there are three other large porphyry targets. We did some aster mapping on those ones. We know that there is copper running there. They are three real porphyry systems there. This is obviously going to be one of the immediate targets that we will look at right away, because we actually don't really know if these ones are even better than Escalones itself. So this is one of the areas we're going to be working on sampling right away and then drilling in the future. So these are literally as large as Escalones is. So in a sense, this project could easily have, I hate to throw out real big numbers, but this could be 3-4 billion tons of ore that will come out of this cluster of porphyries that sits here. Luckily, 35 kilometers away from El Teniente. Company structure, let me actually see here's the share structure. This is when I basically put the deal together. We issued 25 million shares to TMI for the Escalones projects. 25 million shares are going to Wealth. Both of those 25 million shares are restricted for 3 years, and then 2 more years where they cannot be more than 10% of the trading volume in the day. We are putting it into a shell called Atlante, which has about 4 million shares. I raised about just over $800,000 at 10 cents to get this thing up and running, make some payments, keep the show on the road. So we have about totally 6.2 million shares outstanding, and of which we really only have a float of about 12 million shares. So we're actually in the process of raising about 1.5 million shares at 10 cents, which would then get us listed, and we'll have enough money to start doing some shallow drill holes, 200 meters, maybe some of them a little deeper in the Macho Amaria extension of Escalones, and do some sampling on the 3 targets to the north. I guess I never asked anyone to ask me any questions while I was driveling along here. So hopefully everybody.
But just to correct, Hank, I'll jump in to correct a statement that you made. The financing is $1.5 million, not 1.5 million shares.
No, 1.5 million.
And there is a question online. Someone was asking if they wanted to participate in the financing, how would they do that? I would say to either call a representative at Red Cloud or call a representative at Wealth Copper directly.
Yes.
Okay. So so just to finish off, I interrupted you and I apologize. Let's carry on.
No. Actually, as it turns out, I came to the end of the presentation much faster than I anticipated to get there, but I think I made my point fairly clear. I think this is a project. Escalones is a project that actually, it's not just a porphyry that sits there that is, 750 million tons of 0.4, let's say, equivalent, but it's a project that can actually turn into multiple billions of tons of grade. So what we want to see in this world is, of course, we want to increase the tonnage. We think we can actually increase the grade. And then on the third thing that we have no control over, but everybody, including myself, naively believe that the price of copper at some point here in the next year or so will come back to where it used to be, and in fact may actually set new highs. And I'm a fervent believer of that, because I think the whole world is changing, and I think copper is going to be much more in demand than anybody expects. And there really aren't any big discoveries or mines in process. So I think there's going to be, like it always is, copper will be in short supply at some point for a number of years. Yeah.
And to me, I've been doing this for a long time. You and I have the same haircut, I guess, because we've both been doing it for a long time. And when I think of copper, I think of Chile. And when I think of Chile, I think of copper. And the copper deposits in Chile are like the ones that you're working on. These are very large porphyry type deposits that, quite frankly, generate 40% of the country's GDP and are also the foundation for many very, very, very large corporations. So the questions are starting to stream in. I'll read one verbatim here. Given the problem with the indigenous with wealth minerals, are there any concerns with the indigenous with the copper properties?
No, actually, it's I'm not surprised I see that question. When I went, actually, funny enough, when I went to Chile, I must admit that indigenous didn't actually jump to mind when you go to Chile. Yeah. Obviously, when some other places in the world you think about indigenous, in Chile it didn't. But the Atacama Salar actually does have quite a few indigenous communities, and it's generally always my firm belief it's not the indigenous that are really the problem, because in the end, they just want to be, looked after and move forward just like we do. It's always, NGOs running around and pretending that the world is coming to an end if they let this mine go ahead or whatever. So but we did get stifled by them, and I'm a firm believer that we really want to be having them as partners. So we never really stepped across the line. I really believe that you have to deal with them. You want to have them involved because that's just the future of mining, and I'm very conscious of that. We in the south where we are, there are no indigenous people, so we won't have that issue.
Yeah, I mean, this is very remote. It's not at all the same kind of thing.
On the other hand, I wouldn't mind, having indigenous as partners. I think is somewhat of the future of mining, and I would have no trouble to sort of think that I wouldn't mind having some joint venture with any indigenous group, but there isn't in this part where we are. There in the copper deal, we don't have any.
Right. Okay. There's another question here. Escalones has a resource value of in the ground of $17 billion of copper equivalent. So, and it says, why is the financing so cheap? The market cap will only be about 10 million Canadian dollars after the financing. In other words, pro forma the financing. So why is the financing so inexpensive relative to the in situ value in the mineral of the metal in the ground?
I have to say it's whoever is asking that question. I can only say I'm very embarrassed that it is. And it was before COVID-19. It was actually at double the price that it is on this financing. But I really need to get, everything came to a grinding halt in terms of money coming in. Copper prices really went down, and everybody is staying at home, and it's very difficult to get anybody's attention. I mean, if you're in the gold business, it's very easy in today because everybody wants to put money in gold deals. But in copper, it's still a little bit, this is a future kind of metal, even though it may not be that far in the future, but it's still not today. So you're buying in the future. So what I have to consider is it's fear and greed. So you have to overcome the fear with the greed. So I had to lower the price of the financing. And
really,
and I really actually kind of a little bit embarrassed that I actually do have to do that. But I thought I was actually a better promoter than it turns out that I am.
Well, listen,
I should be fired. That's what I think.
We do this all the time at Red Cloud, and it's still a very tough financing environment. And as you mentioned, gold and silver have done very well. But copper has just, the interest in copper is very recent in terms of investors. So, that perhaps can be represented as an opportunity for investors. And, there's very few.
Let's get back to that, because that really is. I mean, you're doing the market cap of this company is $6 million, and it's got a resource, and it's got all kinds of upside potential. So this is like, in a sense, a little bit of a gift, John.
And really, this is your go public financing. In essence, it's a seed round. It's the same price as the financing, that the first and only financing you've ever done. So it is really a seed round. And the saying goes, investors only buy a stock for one reason, and that's to make money. They may sell it for any number of reasons, their daughter's wedding or buying a house or whatever. But the point is, they're buying it to make money. How do you think investors will make money on this stock? And what are the milestones that investors can look forward to as, benchmarks of value creation, if you will?
Okay. There will be, once it goes public, there won't be actually that many shares outstanding. Most of the money that I've raised, let's say, which will be free trading, has been done with, let's say, friends and family, so we won't see most of that coming out. Not that I'm naive when it goes from 10 cents to 50. It's amazing how many people aren't friends and family any longer. But there will be a limit to the number of shares that are actually free trading. So in that sense, we do have an IR department. We know how to market shares. So I think once we're public, this will be actually a reasonably valuable stock right away. So the way to create value for me is initially we do the drilling program that we set out to be, which is actually some shallow holes in the Macho Amaria area, which should show that there is this oxide layer. We counting on that the grade is a little bit higher. So it's like the low-hanging fruit that sits there. There's skarn targets that we can drill on, other low-hanging fruit, and then the next step is go and look at those other 3 porphyry systems that sit there. And no matter what comes out of those, there will be, those 3 are true porphyry systems. So you can always say, we don't really know what the grade is going to be, but we know that there is going to be an enormous increase in tonnage in this cluster of porphyries. Yeah. So to me, Escalones is a project that can come up with all kinds of surprises. I mean, nobody's actually drilled a deep hole there, and then in the modern exploration world in porphyries, I mean, people are drilling thousands of meters. Yeah. So this thing can, be an enormous surprise once you start doing that. But that's not the first plan. The first plan is really pick the low hanging fruit.
Okay. Yeah, it could be to use the cliche, the tip of the iceberg if you start drilling deeper and so on. But there are enough surface targets that'll keep you busy for a while. Here's another question. Based on underlying option agreements for Cristal and Escalones in 2020, is the current raise, the proposed raise of 1.5 million, enough to get the work done?
Yeah, there will be. We have enough of a budget to do the initial drilling, do the sampling and G&A, and we actually there's a payment that is actually being made as we sit here. So that's not really part of the 1.5 I'm talking about. So then it's kind of a little bit of a sensitive subject, let's say, because we have Cristal, which is owned by Patrick Burns, and I keep on promising that we're actually going to make some payments to him in the future. So hopefully he's not watching here.
He's a patient guy, I'm sure. Okay, so the question is, will Red Cloud participate in the marketing for Wealth Copper in the future? I guess I can answer that one as a Red Cloud rep on the call here. The answer is yes. Red Cloud has plans to market. In fact, we've already initiated some social media work, and there's a lot more that Red Cloud can and will do in the future to assist Wealth Copper. I've grown quite fond of Hank and team. I must say, I like copper. I personally own a lot of gold and silver stocks, and I don't own very many other types of stocks. So I see this personally as an interesting opportunity. Again, when I think of copper, I think of Chile, and I think, these kinds of deposits are rare. And one thing that's interesting too, that's worth pointing out, is someone made the observation to me a long time ago that if you look at the people associated with a story, even if you don't understand geology, and most of the people on the line, and let's be honest, most investors don't understand geology because it's not their area of expertise. But for those that aren't familiar with geology, take a look at the quality of the people around this story. And the fact that they're around and lending their name to it should give you some comfort, and that there's some merit to the story. Let's see any other questions. Have you been approached by any major copper companies?
Yes, we, right in the beginning, when we started this, we were actually approached. And I won't go into any detail, of course, as to who it was or how that came about, but we did. But this was pre-COVID-19, and I was arrogant enough to dismiss that. Yeah, because we were, from my perspective, what I wanted to set out to do here, and we're still doing this, is get this thing public, raise some money, create some value, and then we'll be going to talk to major corporations. Yeah. Now, turning back the clock, I should have maybe been a little bit more open to talking, but that wasn't really part of the plan. I mean, I'm in the public market, yeah? This is what I do for a living. So it's falling into the arms of a major corporation changes the dynamics of that. So that's I actually ignored it, but maybe I should not have. But anyway, that was the decision at the time. So.
Yeah, I mean, 2020 hindsight and all that. And I do agree that having a major company invest changes the complexity. It helps because it provides deep pockets, but it also perhaps limits other major companies from coming in. So finding the right time
very few major mining companies come in without some hook, let's say. Yeah. That's right. I mean, if you can get a major mining company coming in for an equity financing, that would be unbelievable. You would be stupid to say no to that, but that's generally not the case. But I'm open. I mean, I'm obviously I'll be very open to it if one of them did come, and certainly one of those with those kind of situations.
Yeah, fair enough. And in terms of the last question, and really this is my question here is. What are the risks? I mean, we tend to, as an industry, we tend to be very good at promoting and waving our arms, and saying what the upside is. And I think in some instances we don't accurately represent the risks. So for either existing investors in wealth minerals or potential new investors in wealth copper, what do you see as the risks to this story and to an investment in this company?
Well, we could completely fail on increasing the grade. I don't think we'll be failing on increasing the tonnage. And then the outlying porphyry, the new targets, let's say, could just turn out to be really low grade porphyries and therefore not very valuable. We don't really know that yet. You like to think out of 3 targets that one of them would be reasonable. So, but I mean, one doesn't know that until you go somewhere. The one thing that I think will always create value is, that there is already a tonnage here at a grade. And if you can increase that tonnage at, let's say, a similar rate, this will have a value when there is a copper market. Yeah.
Okay.
When the tide comes in, all boats go up. And so therefore, no matter what, at some point, I think this thing will automatically rise because of the copper market. But it would be very nice if we obviously established a better grade. But on the other hand, there is a potential for SXCW performance in this project. And if you look at the tonnages, there wasn't really enough work done on which is leachable and what isn't leachable. But you could easily see even today that there could be 150 million tons of about 0.45, 0.46 copper, leachable copper there. Well, that's, in my book, is a mine, yeah? Really, I mean, and we just scrape it down the hill. But, the target isn't that. But on the other hand, we will be looking at that.
And again, for listeners that may not be as familiar with the technology, SXCW stands for solvent extraction electrowinning, and it's a very, very low cost operating technique whereby copper can be recovered by leaching oxide copper mineralization using an acid. And it's 1/50th, no, it's probably an exaggeration, 1/20th the cost of a traditional sulfide copper operation like Escondida and on the big mines in Chile. Much, much lower capital cost and much, much lower operating costs. And whether or not Escalona is amenable to that, we don't know, but the potential is there, and that's one of the things I like about it. It's in essence a free option because you're not paying for it in the current valuation, in my opinion. So, all right, so we'll leave it at that. Hank, any other last comments before we sign off?
No, thank you. Well, thank you very much for doing this and having this webinar, and thanks to the people that are actually sat through this and listened to us. And I actually have to say, this is to me a great opportunity, but not only that, I mean, it could be, since we have people involved, we can actually maybe add other projects. There has been obviously some, we've looked at other projects already, but COVID-19 kind of has slowed down almost everything. But there is the upside with this company that we can enlarge it in the number of projects we're going to have. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Hank. Thank you, Wealth Copper, and thank you everybody on the line. You were very generous with your questions. And of course, this recording, I assume, will be available on the Wealth Copper website for folks to refer to later. And I guess that's it for now, and we'll sign off. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.